We're going to be talking about the principles of manifestation. We want you to be able to manifest your dreams. It could be about love. It could be about career. It could be about a business, whatever is important to you in this season. We want you to have the tools. We want you to have the insight on manifesting your desires, manifesting your purpose, and most importantly, accessing the power that already resides in you. We're going to be talking about the principles of manifestation. We want you to be able to manifest your dreams. It could be about love. It could be about career. It could be about a business, whatever is important to you in this season. We want you to have the tools. We want you to have the insight on manifesting your desires, manifesting your purpose, and most importantly, accessing the power that already resides in you.
Good morning. Good morning. Um, Happy Sunday to everybody. Happy Sunday. I hope everyone is enjoying their weekend. I hope you enjoyed your weekend. I hope you're preparing to enjoy the week in front of us. This morning, I'm going to go directly into just some things that are on my heart. Usually or lately we've done presentation style, but this morning I want to deal with the landscape of the world. Why Manifestation Sundays is so near and dear to my heart. Why I sense so strongly that it's important that we have this conversation, and more importantly today to lay out some talking points that are absolutely important that we give our attention to, and that we absolutely zone in on, so that we are prepared for our tomorrow. Our tomorrow. So, without further ado, let me go directly into it. The landscape is changing, not just in America, but around the world. The landscape is changing before our eyes. And unfortunately, there are not but so many people that are willing to even talk about what's really happening. And at the same time, there's there's not enough folks that have the ability, even those that will talk about it, to tell us directly what's going on. As a people, the human race, we are in a massive transition in the world. We are in a massive transition. And I want to deal with history really quickly in order to give us some context for exactly what is happening now and help us to understand the necessity for us to pivot and to receive the paradigm shift that is necessary for this time. Because there are guardrails that exist within our psyche, our thought process, right? That in the months and years, days to come will not be a reality. It will not be a reality. And here's the thing, you don't want to figure out when you're flying in the air and you're on your way to a destination, and as you begin to land, there's, you find out that there is an emergency and you're unprepared for it, right? If you notice that every time we get on a plane, the crew always gives us the safety guidelines while we're on the plane. They always say we anticipate that there will be no emergency. But just in case, these are the guidelines that you should know and you should follow in case we are in that circumstance. Well, right now, the world is going through an emergency, but no one is giving us the guidelines. Very few are giving us the guidelines. And unfortunately, where the guidelines are being given, they're not in mainstream areas, or they're not being broadcast in the mainstream areas where our attention goes naturally. It's in secret places. It's on the small channels. It's on the little folks are giving out the information and helping people understand the necessity of transition in our lives because of what the transition that's happening in the world. So that being said, let's deal with history really quickly. Our public school system is a result of the Industrial Revolution. The owners, the entrepreneurs of that day needed to figure out how they can get workers to be prepared for the Industrial Revolution. In other words, to work in factories, not only from a skill set perspective, but from a perspective of shaping the mind, shaping the psyche, right? Shaping the emotional space to be prepared to be in the environment of that day, of the Industrial Revolution. They wanted children to get used to listening to a supervisor or a foreman. They wanted children to get used to walking in line. They wanted children to be used to a lunchtime. So the entrepreneurs of that day came together and they imputed their necessities into the education process. And still today, our children that go to school are still operating on a mass level in that same programming. So it started with the Industrial Revolution, but then it expanded into other industries as the Industrial Revolution grew over time. It expanded into other areas. And then we eventually got to the point where corporations were invested in the education system, not just K through 12, but in the colleges. So it started to become necessity in order for you to earn a certain amount of money that you have a degree. Let's fast forward into recent history. In 2008, that entire system fell apart. My age group was just graduating college and going into the workforce. And after graduation, unfortunately, the majority of my age group did not have a job to land. And those that did get a job, it were very low paying. They could not find a job with a living wage. In other words, the ability to be independent. So fast forward some more. We are now in a space where the economic landscape is changing. You were taught education. You were taught the process of being educated, but you weren't economically educated. You don't know that voting is important, but voting doesn't create change. It only allows you to participate in the choices you've been given. But if you want to create change, you have to have the ability to sponsor a bill or to sponsor a law or a policy in government. Entrepreneurs do that. Business owners do that. Property owners do that. When you vote, you are voting for the choices you're being given. But if you want to make real change, if you want to have a real authentic impact on your society, you have to be a person that produces. It's not our fault, but our school systems never emphasize for you the necessity of economic and financial literacy. And the small things that they did teach you at one point, this is in the 1970s, 1980s, and some of the 1990s, you had some schools that would talk about what a checkbook is, what a bank account is. Those are consumer behaviors that you're being taught, but no one and nothing is teaching you the necessity of understanding how to operate as a business owner. You were taught to operate in the credit system as a consumer. In other words, you were taught to borrow so that you can purchase. You were never taught to borrow so you can invest. So many of us across the landscape of America, by the time we are in our 30s and especially in our 40s, many of us have experienced or we have a heavy load of debt on our backs, either from student loans and or from the decisions we've made in consumerism or as consumers in our early adulthood. And then we are in the position where we have to work. Now, listen, I'm not saying anything. Listen, working is important, right? Working is important. But it's where we put our energy. It's where we invest our energy. That is the key. The same 40 hours that you give a job, right? Or the same 40 hours that you give a vision, someone else's vision. You could take that same time and invest in you, your skill set. Now, listen, I'm not saying, everybody is not going to be a Fortune 500 business owner. That's not the point. The point is that you may be an employee, and that's absolutely powerful. But that doesn't mean that you can't have your business on the side operating in the skills and in the knowledge that you have. Some of us, it's cooking. Some of us, it's accounting. Some of us, it's real estate. Some of us, it's teaching. As a matter of fact, it is absolutely imperative in this time that teachers begin to realize that they need to become entrepreneurs. because the landscape in which the school system is beginning to operate, it is very similar to what's happening in the medical field. There was a time that doctors had the right and the ability to prescribe to their patients based on their knowledge base. Now there is formulating a dictation of what a doctor can and cannot say to their patient, which unfortunately in a trickle-down effect can cause lives. The same thing is happening within the landscape of public education. Teachers are being forced to operate under specific narratives, not being allowed to give children certain information that could literally change their lives. I heard a Jewish gentleman talk about the education process of Jewish children. And what he says is grades K through 4, the focus is to teach you how to read. Grades K through 4 is to teach the child how to read. But after grade 4, grade 5 and up, it's reading to learn. Grades K through 4, it's learning to read. Grades 5 and up, it's reading to learn. That's powerful because I want you to understand that the Jewish community in the world is the most, the wealthiest ethnicity on the planet Earth. And there are certain habits built within the fabric of their culture to ensure that they are operating in the principles that will allow them to ultimately have an impact in whatever country they're in. During the Great Migration in America, when immigrants were coming from all around the world, the Jews were they were the poorest of all the immigrant communities that came in. They were the poorest of all the immigrant communities that came in. And in comparison, when they came in, they focused very heavily on entrepreneurship. Other groups, such as Irish Americans, focused on getting the best jobs that were available. Within 60 years, the Jewish community became the wealthiest community in America. Not the wealthiest community in comparison to other immigrant communities, but the wealthiest community, period, ethnicity in America. The reason why I'm pointing that out is because it's absolutely important that we understand that this ship is changing direction. And that means we have to change our focus of the type of information that we receive and that we process. I have to tell you the absolute truth. It will not be enough for the majority of people to just have a job. As you can see, inflation is rampant everywhere. Wages just went up by 4.7%, but inflation is up. Some say by 7%, others say by 13%. That means that the cost of living is still more on average than what the average person is earning. That means that you have to become a producer. I need you to understand that in these developed countries around the world, and we're in America, but in these developed countries around the world, I need you to understand that your government is a corporation, not a nonprofit. It is no secret, your government is a corporation, not a nonprofit. And while there are legalese in place to keep government from operating in certain types of industry, the operators of government are working in the free market. And also the government is operating and creating policies to ensure that it remains in certain levels of power, which is natural. As a matter of fact, if you go through history, every successful government, every successful kingdom was operating as a corporation. So what that means is that corporations, whether we like it or not, corporations, they have one main function, and that is to ensure that the corporation, the bottom line, in other words, that they have income and that they have political power, not just domestically, but across the world. So why am I saying that? The reason why I'm saying that is because I need you to understand that we're about to see a time, or we're transitioning into a time where many of the opportunities that we were used to, the campaigning about jobs, right? These campaign themes that were once a major thing in our developed countries, and especially in America, they are going away. If you don't shift gears and begin to really take it super, super serious about developing you and your family, developing a business, operating as investors, understanding the landscape, understanding how to be, understanding the principles that will ensure, will give you a chance at success. If we don't shift our attention, and this touches every ethnicity in America and across the world. If we don't shift our attention, there are going to be many people caught in the crossfires. I've created and played videos where you've seen former government officials admit that the money system is going through a change. When the money system goes through a change, that means the political system will go through a change. So I'm going to digress here soon, but this is the reason why Manifestation Sunday is so important. Many of us are walking around thinking that the comforts that we've been used to is going to be here forever. And I have to tell you the truth. I have to be responsible and tell you the truth. That is absolutely not what's about to happen and what's happening now. If you're paying close attention, there are zip codes that food is being delivered to, and then there are zip codes that food is not. That food is not being delivered to. I'm talking about in major suburbs, in major cities. You can see that there are disparities in certain communities, and that there is plenty in other communities. That is not an accident. Certain areas around the world, you see that there are different rollouts happening in the energy sector. They're having to shut down certain aspects of the energy sector for certain days. And these are things that are happening in real time. And unfortunately, the majority of us are not paying attention. The majority of us are not in the know. And that's the reason why we're doing Manifestation Sundays. Listen, this is the channel is called Crypto Kingdom, but I need you to understand this. Giving you information, economic, financial information, and not preparing you mentally, intellectually, and spiritually is doing you a disservice. Unfortunately, many of us are so broken internally that we don't have the capacity to receive the wisdom and the understanding of what we need to do to prepare for the future, not because we have an intellectual disability, not because we have a psychological disability, but because we have been playing the programs that we've been taught. I have to say it straight up, and I have to tell you the truth. We have begun to live our lives strictly for pleasure and not for purpose. The reason why our community, some communities, and the community that I am from, the reason why we are in some cases major trouble, for example, families, the decline of families. the decline of long-term relationships. That's because our relationships have been hijacked by the idea of romance. And what I mean by that, I'm not saying that we don't enjoy relationship, but what I'm saying is that the purpose of relationship is productivity and purpose, not pleasure. Pleasure is secondary. Our ancestors understood that. And now at the point in which, and especially in my generation, at the point in which we start to experience discomfort, we are starting to quit on things like family. And let me help you understand something, that without the structure of family, you can forget about operating as a financially free community. It absolutely will not work. There are 12 major families that are running the majority of the world. They're families. And while you are accepting, while as a community and while as a generation, we are accepting principles, right, and slogans and ideas that push individualism, right, and that tear away at the fabric of the family for the sake of being politically correct. What we don't understand is that there are families that are formulating these ideals so that they will remain in positions of power, because they don't want you, because, well, let me not say that, but they understand that any community that understands the necessity of proper information, proper education, and the power of family will become competition. Right now, many communities are not competition to these folks that are in power. And I'm not saying this is not about any revolution. I'm talking about the ability to compete economically and politically, to be able to have your voice be heard. I'm going to tell you right now, the marches is over. The way things were done in the 1960s, that day is over. Period. That day is over. We have been going to school, we've been going to church, and we have not yet heard on a mass level, we have not heard in a mainstream level, for the most part, the necessity to change and pivot our attention and understand we have to become business owners and investors. We have to put a necessity on family building. And that we cannot necessitize our pleasure over purpose. I know that there is a narrative that our ancestors, our grandmothers, our great aunts, our grandfathers, that we look at their stories and say, listen, I would never do that. And obviously there is a progression as generations move forward. But one thing they understood is that they were in a fight. And when you're in a fight, the last thing you're thinking about is your ability to get high levels of pleasure, as opposed to ensuring that you have security for your family, security for your generation, security for your legacy. Unfortunately, we've drunk the Kool-Aid of consumerism and pleasure. And now we're entering into a period that if we do not shift and we do not begin to move into a new direction of behavior, we are going to unfortunately experience the worst of this transition. The transition has so much opportunity built into it. It is not a time of doom and gloom if we pay attention and if we focus on where we belong and we focus on what we need to do. I'm going to tell you right now that comfort is the enemy of progress. Comfort is the enemy of progress. In other words, what I am telling you is that if we do not take it absolutely serious to be willing to be uncomfortable, in other words, put ourselves through discomfort. In other words, start to push, write the book, whatever it is that you're supposed to do. If you're an author, go ahead and write the book. If you are a chef, go ahead and work on the recipes. If you're a public speaker, start to begin to operate in your public speaking gift. Whatever it is you do, we are in a 911 right now. We cannot afford not to have focus. We cannot afford not to be solely dependent upon what they call the job market. Listen closely. Elon Musk is one of the largest employers in the world, and he is currently working on humanoid robots to become the new workers. What does that mean for the human race? On one hand, it means that the creator will be living in the best time of our lives. In other words, if you are creative, if you are a person that is an entrepreneur, business owner, you are in one of the best times in your life. If you are a person dependent upon work, dependent upon jobs, let me explain to you. The accounting system, the accounting system is about to change. It is about to become the highest form of perfection we've ever seen with the blockchain technology. That means that the average accountant will lose their job because the accounting process is becoming perfect, just about perfect, and automated. That means they will no longer need the human. Smart contracts is the new form of legal proceedings, of law, of putting documentation and contracting. Smart contracts. It is the automation of legal practice. That means that lawyers, which law is already a difficult enough industry to operate in, but lawyers left and right will not have the opportunities they once had because contracts are becoming automated through smart contracts. The world is changing. You are not safe. I have to tell you the absolute truth. You are not safe. The landscape is changing. In 7 years, the world will look completely different. And that's not just because time is changing. It's because of the time we're in. I'm sounding the alarm for our families. I'm sounding the alarm for our communities. And I'm begging us to please open our eyes. Because the times that are coming are very serious. And if we're not paying attention to what's going on, unfortunately, the level of loss is going to be catastrophic. First, it will happen economically, and it will be a trickle-down effect. Imagine being in a position where medicine is already expensive, but it becomes more expensive and less accessible. There's a major supply chain issue happening. You don't notice that when you go online, there are things that are not available that used to be available? Lots of things, lots of items are no longer available. Things are running out way more quickly. Productivity is down heavily. That's because of the changing world order. And that's not some conspiracy word. That's a book that's written by Ray Dalio, a top hedge fund billionaire. He just wrote a book called The Changing World Order. I encourage you to go look at it. There's also videos if you don't want to see the book about the cycles and the cycle that we're in. I'm asking you with everything in me, please shift your thinking. Please shift your attention. It may not be your fault that what you were taught and what you were told is not going to work anymore. As a matter of fact, for my generation, it wasn't working when we received it. But now we're going to see that this world changing is going to make a lot of the things we thought we knew obsolete. So please begin to manifest your dreams. Please begin to give attention to your gifts. Please begin to hone in on your talents. Please encourage in your family financial and economic literacy. Somebody in your family needs to understand the political landscape globally and domestically. It's absolutely, absolutely, absolutely important. I appreciate you tuning in. I appreciate you seeing, watching this, even if you're watching after the live. I love each and every one of you. It's time for us to shift. Please enjoy the rest of your weekend. Do something to invest in yourself so that you can be a protector and a provider within your family. I love you. Everybody have a good weekend.